there, welcome. I'm back from 2 months away. The reason why I was gone was I meant to come back earlier, then I got a bad cold, so I should have come back like 2 weeks ago. Was the idea, then I got a bad cold, so you wouldn't be able to hear what I was saying. So I just thought that's kind of useless. So this first week, what I'm doing is I'm just doing a selection of films, all in this one video of films I've seen that I don't think I could do videos on, or I don't want to do videos on. I have watched quite a lot in the last 2 months, so I've been away, so I've got lots of videos planned for certain films I watched that I really enjoyed. But it's been quite nice actually to watch films and not have to think about doing a video of them straight away. So I am quite enjoying that as well, that sense of I don't need to worry about doing a video like the week after or a few days later. So I managed to watch a lot of films that I will be doing videos on in the next month or so. I've got about a month's worth of like films watched that would make, just to, even if I don't watch anything for the next month, which was not going to happen. But, I've got to have a massive backlog. But such a backlog now that I've actually got lots of films that I don't really feel are videos for, full individual videos. So I'll be covering them all today. So this is films I've watched that are on my holidays that are, there's some really good ones in here, but there's also some 1 or 2 weaker ones. So, just like I don't have a take on them. And I thought it'd be good to do a video like this. Well, I should be doing a video on Road and Nazarene on Sunday, which we're doing a live stream if everything goes to plan with the usual suspects. That should be our first live stream as well. Again, that took longer than expected. I think at least this year, no one's really had the energy to get started. So it's just been one of those years. I don't know anybody who doesn't think it's a rough year already. And we're only in February, so that's why there's been a delay. So, to the films. I'll start off with some films some bigger films really. This one I watched over Christmas, which was Avatar: Fire and Ash, which was in my top list, I think, of my videos when I did the best of the year, but I hadn't actually done an individual video on it. And I don't think it was really worth it doing a video on it, because it's a big melodrama. That's what it is, really. It's a big epic. I saw it twice in the cinema because it was epic. I mean, I went to see it by myself, and then I took my nephew to see it because he was meant to see it with someone else, and they bailed on him, so it was an excuse to go see it again. It's 3 hours, but doesn't really feel it, at least for me. Some people can't stand this film. Some people think it's a come down from the last one. I actually like them the more they go on. I mean, I liked 2 more than 1. I liked 3 more than 2. So I think they're going up a little bit. They still have some of the same problems as before. It's like some of the dialogue is not great. Some of the characterization's a bit broad. But the actual melodrama of it, of the situations, these are adventure stories. If you read like adventure stories as a kid, like I did, like Three Musketeers or Robert Louis Stevenson stuff, like Treasure Island or Kidnapped or something, you know what this genre is. This is a science fiction version of that, where families go through struggles. There's a revelations involved, and people have to find themselves through action. It's an old genre that pops up throughout cinema and throughout literature. It is pulpy, but it works. One of the reasons why it's a big hit is because it works. There's something in these kind of stories that people attach themselves to, and it's something that a lot of critics don't like because, they're better than this, apparently. I'm not. Yes, they say bro too many times, but the actual melodrama of it all, and the kind of the characters, I like the characters. Some people dislike certain characters. I liked them all. I thought everyone was fine. I just enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun, really enjoyable. I'll be looking forward to owning it when it comes out in digital to project it and see it again. So, yep, that was terrific. I really enjoyed it. Even better was 28 years later, The Bone Temple, which came out and dropped dead at the box office, but got a lot of good reviews. I think everyone who saw it thought it was good. It was just that people were a bit burnt out from the first 20 years later, which I liked a lot as well, but a lot of people were really kind of like You know, the ones for keen in that one. I think that really hurt this film because this film is much. I think it's much easier for an audience to take in a way because there's a narrative that's streamlined. It's focused on who the villains are, who the good characters are, and it's just escalation of typical difficulties for the characters in this post-apocalyptic world. It's really well made. It's really Alex Gall did the script again. Nia DaCosta came in to direct it. She did Candyman, the Candyman reboot a few years ago. She also did The Marvels, which was not a good film. But you could tell in that film it had been hacked about by the studio. I mean, by all accounts, she wasn't even near the last round of reshoots. That's how studio bound that film was. But this one is like she was in charge of it. She got the script, she was in charge of it. You could just tell a director was in charge of this film, just like in 28 years later, you tell it was a Danny Boyle film. Here, you tell there's a director in charge. It's a different style from that film, from the first one. It's more character based. It's much more like a horror movie, and then the horrors about how human beings are rather than the creatures themselves, and how it's about these feral survivors in the apocalypse who basically kill other humans and who are for their own like Satanist Satan worshiping Satanist mentality, and it's like how bad will people fall when they're in hell, and it's wonderful. It's one of those ones that do not know that much about it beyond the basic premise of it's some bad humans and some good humans. This is a zombie trope. The humans are bad in zombie land, but this one does it really well. This is one of the best versions of it since Day of the Dead. It really delivers, And again, this series definitely has a lot of love for George Romero films because they don't just do Living Dead or Dawn of the Dead. They cover all the Dead films. Even in the last one, there was Survive the Dead referencing. That's very much an outlier of George Romero zombie films. So it's like there's a lot. So highly recommended. Go see it if you haven't yet. It'll be about in digital soon. Try and see it on the biggest screen as possible, though. It's one of those films I wish I had time to see it again. I know someone who saw it quite a few times. When it came out, I just didn't have the ability to go and see it more than once, but it's one I really wish I had. It's just like, because it is really terrific. Now, Anaconda 2025, which is one of those films that it's a lot better than it should be or needed to be. It's from the director of The Unbearable Weight of Talent or something, the Nicolas Cage movie from a year or two ago, and now because that film did really well, they gave him a bigger budget to do an Anaconda reboot, which is a comedy about these guys who one's a director who's directing like wedding videos. Like he wanted to do more. I mean, he did films as a kid, and now that's Jack Black who does these wedding videos. And Paul Rudd's an actor, he's a failed actor. And they decide, Paul Rudd says, I've got the rights to Anaconda, the remake rights to Anaconda. And they decide to go down the lake and actually film a new version of Anaconda, and put all the money into it. And it's basically the whole idea is what we did to Ed Wood as a monster movie, an actual monster movie. We're happy for Ed Wood they actually had a monster movie adventure. That's the idea of the film. And like Ed Wood, it's like it's not a film about big laughs, it's about small laughs, but character stuff. It's not in the same league as Ed Wood, but it is enjoyable. I mean, all the actors are well cast. They're all like self-involved to a degree. They all have their problems. It's just wonderfully enjoyable. It's one of those films you could happily put on every couple of years and enjoy it. It's got just a nice mood to it. It's just very, very sweet. Yeah, the monster stuff's not amazing, but it's not really meant to be. It's meant for comedy, and even like the scares are played for humor. So yeah, it's really enjoyable. It did not do that well with the critics, which is a shame because I think they were a bit tough on it. Now we have a new Sam Raimi film, Send Help, which I saw last week, and it is wonderful. This is return to form Sam Raimi. Although I really liked his last film too, Doctor Strange, which didn't get a lot of love. This is just a fun two-hander. It's basically Hell in the Pacific, but with yuppies. But it's not a war. They keep on mentioning Castaway, but this is Hell in the Pacific. You know, it's like people do not have many good movie references unless it's a film from like 20 years ago. They cannot go back to the 60s and say, there's a famous movie then that had this premise. You know, and basically it's Rachel McAdam and Dylan O'Brien as two people who are in a plane crash. They're the survivors. Dylan O'Brien's the boss. Rachel McAdam's the kind of lowly worker bee who is actually very good at her job, but she's very good at survival, and he's not, and he's injured, and it's like the tables turn and it becomes a mind game between both of them. But who gets supremacy? Who gets to be in charge and who doesn't? And who's genuine, who's not? And Raimi has a lot of fun with various weird camera angles and various bits of blood and gore, but also a lot of suspense beat. But mainly a comedy. It's a comedy. It's really a very broad, dark comedy about two people who can't stand each other. And it's like, how far will they go? How far will they dehumanize themselves to, survive and deal with this other person? It's a riot, but again, I don't want to talk too much. It's like, you should see it for yourself and just see what they do with it. It's a lot of fun. The actors are having a good time. The director's having a good time. It's one of those things, like, they made it for a limited budget. So sometimes the special effects aren't amazing. But they get by. You don't need tons of money in this one. And because it's on a budget, it means they can have more fun character beats than you would have if you had to think about, we get our money back. This one is like, no, they don't need to, as long as it kind of opens well and people back to it, you'll get your money back, and that's what's happened. It's just a film people enjoy because it is a fun movie. You get to make good movies and people will show up. Okay, now we're going into films that were basically released on the streaming channels. So I'm going to start off with The Wrecking Crew, which is, Dave Bautista and Jason Momoa. One's a cop, one's a military guy. The father gets killed in Hawaii, and Bautista's right in Hawaii. Momoa comes to figure out what's going on. He knows there's something dodgy about the death, because it looks like an accident, but it's obviously something wrong. They start to investigate it. There are complications. There are bad guys. There are people to shoot. Lots of explosions. Lots of insanity. It's one of those films that the plot is very basic, but the characters are fun. They're not amazingly deep characters, but the actors playing them have fun with them. They seem to be enjoying themselves. And it's just one of those kind of movies that are very throwaway. It's like perfect for like a streaming service to watch every so often you feel watching it. But also I think it's just one of those films that if they'd released it in the cinema, it'd have done pretty well and made some money in the cinema before they came to streaming. I think they lost out by going straight to streaming, because this is a lot more fun than some movies I've seen in the cinema. They had mega budgets and lots of advertising. I mean, it's one of those films that's like a 3.5 star film, but it's a really enjoyable 3.5 star film. It loses points basically because the actual story's so basic. Right, so that's a fun movie. The Rip I liked more. The Rip is Matt Damon, Ben Affleck. George Cunningham directed it. It's really fun for the first 2/3. The last third becomes a bit obvious. It goes into the action movie thing that's kind of, been played out, and it's not as smart as the rest of the film. The film is basically they go and find this drug money in this house, in this abandoned area. So it's very much like a Sidney Lumet film meets Assault Precinct 13, where they know there's danger out there. No one's getting on inside. it's a limited location and there's a lot of paranoia and there's a lot of beats that cause havoc. It's like, who do you trust? Who do you not trust? Can you trust this person who's talking to you? Can you not? And it's really enjoyable because it's well cast. All the actors are obviously having a good time doing this paranoid film. The director gets to shoot a location from every possible angle. There are some nice action scenes in the first two thirds that are not overdone, but have some nice like little beats of a bit of adrenaline, and then they pull it back, and then something else happened, and they pull it back, and that's where this film's more comfortable. By the end, they have to do a big action scene to finish it off, and it's like it's quite satisfying. It's also the final revelations of the plot. You can figure them out, and it's like, oh, you were wish to come up with something smarter than that, because it's like they do everything really well until the end, until the final revelation is like you need something else there, not quite that. It wasn't quite. You need another twist somewhere in there, and they never quite had it, but still very enjoyable. I'll definitely watch this again at some point. Again, it's just a really well made film. I just wish the ending was slightly better. It's almost like they said you have to put some of the money into the big final action scene to get the film made. And it's like, it's not to do the rest of the film. The rest of the film's talk with a little bit of action, and then it's like all action for 10 minutes. And it's like, it's not quite the same. Right. Now I'm going on to two films about the movie business. We have Laddie and I'm Chevy Chasing You're Not. So one's about Alan Ladd Jr., who's a very well respected and well liked person. Another one's about Chevy Chase, who's, well, not. I'll start with Laddie. Laddie, it was made by the Alan Ladd Jr.'s daughter. She's talking about how she never really knew that when she was growing up because he was working all the time, and they get closer later on in life. And it's a nice biography from her daughter, but it's also, because of that, it lacks certain critical things going on in it. It doesn't point. It shows you his past. He was the son of a famous actor who died fairly young. He came up on his. He came up with the film business behind the scenes. He didn't want to be an actor, and soon went into the mailroom, an agency. Soon became an agent. Then became an agent to some big stars, and then at a certain point got bored with that. He moved out and became a producer, and his first run of films weren't very good. I mean, if you look at the films, there's one or two good ones, but generally he had a run of bad films that he invested in as a producer. And then he came back to 20th Century Fox, where he was offered a job to just run the production stuff because he was a producer and he knew how to do that stuff. Then eventually get pushed up to be the head of the studio and started choosing what films to make. And that's where he actually came into his own. Because he was an agent, he knew all the talent, and he also knew to leave talent alone as long as they weren't going crazy. He gave them some space and give them some respect. And the film shows this period where he did a lot of good stuff. He picked up Young Frankenstein and let Mel Brooks make it the way he wanted to, and then he made other Mel Brooks films. And Mel Brooks stayed with 20th Century Fox for years afterwards. He backed George Lucas before American Graffiti was even released for Star Wars, and then he protected Lucas when he was making the film, and the board hated it. And he made a bunch of other films. They picked up the Bob Fosse film, all that jazz, when it was getting dumped by our studio, and it was mostly shot, and he picked it up. So he did a lot of good stuff. They avoid one of the bombs, because I remember a few 20th Century Fox bombs that were major bombs, like Damnation Alley, and there was one called Other Side of the Wind or something, Other Side of something, that was a film that the studios wanted until they saw it was a disaster. But because they wanted that one, they had to take Star Wars, and Star Wars was a hit, and this other film wasn't. So there were flops in there as well. This documentary does not acknowledge that as much, because it's his daughter doing it. The film then goes into the 80s, where he leaves the studio because he's fed up with the owners. There's a lot of tension there. and he becomes a producer again in the Ladd company. And this is where the film gets weaker because his daughter's making it, she can't actually point out flaws in her father. Like, he picked up interest in projects and then hacked them to pieces is the basic thing that no one wants to talk about in this section. Like, he backed Blade Runner, great. Then his studio was one of the people who I did the voiceover and I did the happy ending, and which they don't really bring up in this film. They also brought in Once Upon a Time in America. Great, they held back it with Alan Melchin, but they're the people who cut it down to 2 hours and made it one of the worst films ever made in an American release, even though the European release was a masterpiece. The Right Stuff, he was not happy with Philip Kaufman and the DP because they spent a lot of money. Which, even though that film had producers of Rocky and Raging Bull, Shatov and Winkler in charge of it, so they were the ones who really were like in charge of that production. He was blaming the director for it, and then he blamed one of his friends for because he was ill in hospital all the time. They put some footage back in which he said cut out. And the film bombed anyway. The footage would have made a difference, but it was the best film he's ever been involved with, and he wanted to cut it. So there's that thing is like, yeah, he picked up some stuff, he supported some people, but there was like, yeah, he kind of didn't realise what he had. And he also started the Police Academy series, which is not something to be proud of. After that, his company went under because of a lot of bombs. He went to MGM and he was studio head there for like 5 years, which the documentary doesn't cover because there wasn't much good released in those 5 years. It's the thing is like it covers the high points, but then obscures the low points and the points where he may have been wrong, to put it mildly. Like they don't really cover like that period so much. The only mention Willow, which did okay. But that was a period when MGM didn't have much money and they were always struggling. And they weren't putting out great films either. Like, this is a guy who knew people and brought people in to the industry and brought people in to make films. A good relationship with a lot of directors. Like, he brought in Alien and helped shepherd it through when he was the studio head at 20th Century Fox. But, yeah, feeling by the mid-80s in this documentary, he kind of it was like too old for the industry. It was like his taste and industry taste of the modern audience weren't quite the same anymore. And at that point in the 90s, he wasn't really doing much after he left MGM. Like, he produced Braveheart, which for a lot of people is a big good thing, but for me it's the demerit for anyone's career because I hate that film. And he produced Gone Baby Gone, which is a decent film. But there's a certain point where you could say he did the Brady Bunch films, which are fun. But there's a sense of it passed him by. He kind of he didn't know what the audience wanted anymore. So, and then eventually went into retirement. And that's the end of the documentary. And the idea was he didn't speak much, he didn't talk about all the good stuff he did. So it's a documentary that's interesting, but it's flawed by the fact that you don't have an objective person pointing out his flaws. That's not the problem for the Chevy Chase documentary. It's actually getting people talking in documentaries the hard point because Chevy Chase alienates a lot of people. Now, this is a documentary that's interesting because Chevy Chase doesn't seem to understand why he's hated. And it goes into the idea that to some people he's nice, some people he likes. If he likes someone, he's nice to them. He's got a sarcastic wit, but if he bonds with somebody, that's fine. Like he got on with Goldie Hawn, he got on with Beverly D'Angelo. There's like certain people he got on with fine. And if some other people, other directors especially, he was a nightmare. John Carpenter called working with him one of the worst experiences of his career. Other directors had a similar feeling about him. He was not a well-liked person, apparently, in Saturday Night Live when he was there. I'm just going by the documentary. He said some things when he did something in life that didn't dear him. The community thing is almost legendary by now. The disaster behind the scenes there, and I love Community, and I liked his performance in Community. But it's like you can separate. I like some of the stuff this guy does, but I wouldn't want to be anywhere near him as a person. And even you're watching the documentary, you get a sense of this is a guy who's messed up and he's never seen a therapist or a therapist has worked for him. And he's not objective of himself at all. He just doesn't get why people are so mad about him. And he just goes on, and he had a mother who was very destructive and who caused him a lot of problems. And then he seemed to just follow that pattern himself, it seems, but not recognise it. The way a lot of people who are difficult don't recognise that they're following patterns of other generations. That's what it seems like to me, anyway, from the documentary. That's what it seems to be suggesting. I might be wrong about his personality to certain people, but the documentary does suggest that. That's what I'm going by the documentary. So it's interesting. It's always interesting how many people did not sit for the documentary. You get one director for Community, that was it. No one else in Community would talk about him. Not even Dan Harmon, who would talk to anybody. And a lot of people... You don't get John Landis to make 2 films in the 80s when he was at his peak. You don't get Steve Martin. You get Lorne Michaels and Dan Aykroyd. But there's lots of them that you don't get. And it tells you a lot that a lot of people don't like him much. And like when his career went down the tubes after his drug addiction period, and then when he came back and made films that weren't very good, not a lot of people were like offering a hand to help him, it seems, because he'd alienated so many people at that point. So it's an interesting documentary, you know. So we'll leave it at that. Okay, we'll now go to some films that are films I've rewatched or watched the first time that are not new, or not in the last year or two anyway. So I'll go to First and Last Men, or Last and First Men, which is the based on an Olaf Stapleton novel from the 1930s. It's an interesting film. I wouldn't say it's a successful film. It's positing an idea about people in a science fiction vein of what humanity is going to become in the future, and how we're going to evolve and become creatures of more of the mind than of flesh, and where that would take us to. And the problem with it is, it was written in the 1930s, and so it's an old-fashioned science fiction story of the kind I quite like, actually, but it's very old-fashioned, and it's not been adapted to take into account what we found out about physics and biology and all the rest of it over the past 100 years. Well, that's how it seems. It feels very old-fashioned, and they have like people surviving in Pluto and things, which is very 1930s science fiction. It's not reality for humanity. And just the whole thing, for every moment it feels very moving, there's 2 or 3 moments that feel kind of embarrassing, because it's like you haven't adapted it. you're just kind of putting bits of it in there and stating it, and then having lots of nice shots of architecture of all these like ruins and all these buildings, all shot very nicely with nice music, because the director he died recently. He was a musician who did lots of film scores. But this film just is paceless. It doesn't have the Tilda Swinton does narration, and it doesn't have a sense of pace of where it's going to be interesting, where it's not. Where do you peak? Where do you slow down? It's just unending. And again, you get the titters with some of this stuff is because it's like you haven't adapted it. You've just taken it and that's it, and it's like it doesn't really work. But it's interesting to watch. That was my first film of the year of 2026. And it was a very good one. It tells me how bad the year's going to go. apocalyptic film about humanity. Yes. I started well. And now we go to another science fiction, Timecrimes, which Saoirse Ronan had been raving about for a while, and I had proceeded to not watch it because I'm like that sometimes. If someone keeps on telling me how good something is, I will not watch it. But it is good. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's as good as Ronan thinks it is. I think it's well plotted. I could see where it was going pretty quickly because I read a lot of science fiction, and it's like the plotting is nicely done, but it's not particularly original. Maybe it was when it was released, but now it's like, yeah, I've seen that. It's well acted, it's well directed, but it feels like it's a nice like loop of a story that works well. But I'd much rather rewatch Primer, I mean, which I think is a stronger film and a more interesting film about time travel than this one is. But that's just my taste. A lot of people love this film. I'm in the I liked it but didn't love it category, you know. But it's one you should give a try. And you probably tell I'm not saying that much about it. I'm trying not to. Because saying anything is kind of giving some stuff away. The only thing I mentioned was a time loop because everyone knows there's a time loop because it's a time travel film, and the time loop thing happens really early, so I'm not giving anything away. You can probably tell that in the trailer. Right, another science fiction, but slightly less intellectual, is Zathura, which is Jon Favreau film from the 2000s. It's a big science fiction family film about two brothers who play a game called Zathura. It's the same writer who did Jumanji. Wrote that book Zathura, which is kind of a sequel to Jumanji. This film is sort of like the first Jumanji, was directed by Joe Johnston, which is like, it's enjoyable, but your feeling is that they haven't quite figured it out. Josh Hutcherson is a lead boy. He's still quite young. Kristen Stewart shows up as a sister, and she's in it for the second half of the film. Dax Shepard shows up halfway through as well, but it is basically four characters in one location, and you have a lot of special effects around it. Tim Robbins turns up at the beginning as the father of the two boys, but he's out of it pretty quickly. It is enjoyable, but you can tell where it's going the whole time. But it's still one of those ones that's like, yeah, I can probably rewatch that quite happily. It's like it's one of those 3.5-star films that he's like, yeah, it's fun. It's not amazing, but it's fun. And, you know, it was like, it's a very inoffensive movie, and, you know, I just see a feeling as it's missing a year somewhere. They haven't quite figured it out. But there was a lot of good stuff there. It's kind of like Cowboys and Aliens, another film Favreau did, like, about 5 years later, where you have some nice bits, but you also have some bits that are a bit clunky, and it's like, the clunky stuff just pulls it down a little bit. Right, so that's still enjoyable. Now we have like some animated stuff. We have Rise of the Guardians and Early Man. Now, Rise of the Guardians is a Christmassy film, but that's when I saw it, and you did have Santa in it. You also have the Easter Bunny, and it's all about all these fictional characters who are trying to keep people's belief in the magic of life going, and you've got this other character who's trying to destroy people's belief, and have people believe in nothing. That's when he gets his power, and it's a very basic story, but it's enjoyably told. It's really enjoyable. I really had fun with it. It's like, I thought this was a step up from Zathura for enjoyment, where, yeah, this has a very basic story, but the characterization and development of the characters throughout it delivers. It really delivers what it needs to deliver, and it's a enjoyable film. I saw this and I saw it after Christmas, which I'm not going through this time. I'm going to have covered in the past some point. It's also a very enjoyable Christmas film. It's the sense of, they understand the Christmas bit, they also understand the adventure bit, and it's like, they understand like with the fantasy but you also need the character moments as well. So it's not just about Christmas, or not just about the kind of fantastical. And Rise of the Guardians does that. It's really a fun movie. Early Man is a bit weirder. It's Nick Park directed it, who did Wallace and Gromit. It's an Aardman film, but it's a niche film. It's about football, and it's about football for people who are in Britain. And I don't think it travelled well to America. In Britain, you get all the jokes. In America, you probably not get half the jokes. But around the world, you probably got the jokes. I guess one of those films that didn't do well when it was released, but it probably plays really well now, like on Netflix, on any of the streaming services. You put it in front of the kids on TV, they'll probably enjoy the hell of it. Just Early Man dealing with football and dealing with invaders and all the rest of it. It's quirky characters. The plot is just basic, but the actual characters and some of the jokes are a lot of fun. So it's one of those ones that's like, it's not as good as the top level Nick Park stuff, but it's still enjoyable. It's still really enjoyable. And I've watched it 2 or 3 times. I think it's twice, 3 times, something like that. Now, but I know I'll rewatch it again. It's one of those films every couple of years I think, I should really watch that again. Because it's just enjoyable without having to be brilliant. Sometimes that's all you need, especially when it's Christmas period. We just want to watch something fun like that. Now, I'm going to my last few. So I've got Sleepy Hollow, the Tim Burton film. Still really enjoyable. I'm not sure if I've done a video on this one before. It's just a homage to Hammer and to old-fashioned like gothic stories. This one's set in America. Johnny Depp has a lot of fun playing Ichabod Crane. Princess Christina Ricci as his love interest. There's lots of eccentric British actors like Michael Gambon and Michael Gough. You know, Ian McDiarmid, you know, all of them. Anybody, you know, of a certain age in British film who's still breathing turned up in this film. Christopher Lee turns up as well in a short part 2. And then he was in a lot of Tim Burton films after this. It's just fun. It's just one of those things. When I first saw it, I wasn't so keen on it because the plot's kind of obvious. But then when you rewatch it, it's like the plot doesn't matter. It's all about having fun with these characters and having fun with all this settings and just the atmosphere of it. And yeah, it's just really enjoyable. It's a very rewatchable film. I don't know many times I've watched this film, but it's a lot. And it's not bad for a film I initially thought wasn't that great. But I was thinking it followed Mars Attacks, which I adored, so I think it was like I had too high expectations. And this was more of a softer Tim Burton compared to the craziness of Mars Attacks. It's more normal. Now we have Free Fire, which is a Ben Wheatley film. So it stars Cillian Murphy, Brie Larson, a bunch of British character actors, Armie Hammer before the scandal. This is a blast. This is just silly. This is a bunch of people doing an arms deal in New York, I think it is. In American City, 2 of the people running the arms deal from either side are going to fight the night before, which causes havoc between them, and then suddenly there's a firefight between both sides, and what should have been a simple arms deal has become an area of people crossing each other and double crossing each other, and there's lots of plots within plots. But it's still basically an 80-minute film. It's 80-90 minutes, and it's all these people in this warehouse, and they have to crawl along the floor and shoot each other and all the rest of it. So it's just a lot. It's just really enjoyable, pulpy nonsense where it's about a bunch of character actors having to do their thing with other character actors and getting to be weird and having some... But everyone has a kind of, you know, either a gruesome injury or a gruesome death. I mean, everybody gets scribbed up in this film. Whether you survive or not, you get scribbed up. Yeah, so yeah, it's a lot of fun. Another one of those films I've watched before and I'll watch again. It's just a blast if you're ever looking for the right kind of level of silly and, you know, genre. And finally, we have The Inspector Wears Skirts, which I would actually say is the weakest film of this whole bunch. It's well-loved film, and I don't get it. It's one of those films that Asian fans seem to like, and I just think it's a really weak comedy for 2/3 of the film, and then there's a third of the film that's a action movie where the comedy's not quite as weak, and there's a couple of decent enough fights, but it's still kind of awkward. It's just there. It's not a film I'm not watching the sequels. I'm stopping at one film. That's it. I think Jackie Chan produced it, or someone like that produced it. One of the big people in Hong Kong films produced it. They thought it'd be fun to have like a bunch of women martial artists and comedians doing this thing. So it's kind of a police academy type of thing, but these women going into this special police training. And, you know, so you have a good action scene at the beginning to set up the premise of women can do stunts too, and then you get good stuff at the end, and in between you've got all these men being sexist to the women, and they're trying to prove themselves, and there's lots of annoying subplots about the romance, and people fooling people, and you know you've got this guy who's conning all these women as if he's out with a boyfriend, when it turns out he's just conning them, telling them he's in Britain when he's not, and there's all these weird things going on in the film, and it's fairly tedious. It's just like blah. So yeah, that was probably my weakest film I've seen in the last 2 months. But a lot of people love it. So who am I to argue with people's enjoyment of a shitty little film? And that's me. I've enjoyed that film enough. Right, so I hope you enjoyed this. This is me back doing videos. But next week before I do any more. This is me for now, but I should be streaming on Sunday. Ronan Nazarin Productions on YouTube. We should have a stream up at 11 AM GMT. If all goes to plan, which sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. Right, so that's me for now. I hope you enjoyed this. Bye.